Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below, and if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Wednesday in Major League Baseball. First up, we see the Oakland Athletics taking on the New York Yankees. Kyle Muller and Johnny Brito are your starters. I gotta say, I think Monday and Tuesday's cards in Major League Baseball are a lot better than this one. I'll probably be treading lightly for Wednesday's games, but in this one, you look at Johnny Brito's numbers on paper, 2-3 with that 6.08 ERA, obviously struggling at the Major League level in his first season there. But when you look at the matchups and the teams that he's had to face this season, it's not been easy for a right-handed pitcher. He's really either had to face a winning team, a team with a winning record, or a team that just hits right-handed pitchers very well, like a team like the San Francisco Giants. He's faced the Giants, Orioles, Twins, Angels, Twins, Rangers, and Rays. So, pretty much murderer's row in some of the teams he's faced. And now you're facing an Oakland Athletics team that is one of the worst teams in baseball offensively against right-handed pitchers. Second highest strikeout rate in the last 2 weeks against righties. Their team OPS is outside the top 15 as well. I think this is a spot for Brito to bounce back and put together a quality start for the Yankees. And Kyle Muller on the other side is 6.62 ERA overall and a 9.42 ERA away from home. So even worse numbers on the road, 14 in the third innings away from home, 22 base hits, 15 earned runs, 3 home runs, 10 walks, a 10-7 walk to strikeout ratio. Not going to get it done against this Yankees team that gets a big bat back in Aaron Judge in the lineup. Give me the New York Yankees here on the run line at Yankee Stadium. Next up, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're going to see Antonio Senzatella and Rich Hill on the mound in this one. Now, the Pittsburgh Pirates lineup has struggled a little bit against righties in the last couple of weeks, but I still think they can get to Antonio Senzatella in this one. Senzatella struggled in the minor leagues quite a bit. He pitched in his first start against the New York Mets at the Major League level, and he fared pretty well. He only gave up 1 earned run in 5 innings, but he gave up a home run in that game. He only had 3 strikeouts, and that's the big thing. He gives up sharp contact, gives up usually a lot of base hits and a lot of base runners, and doesn't miss a lot of bats to go with it. So I think the Pittsburgh Pirates can get to him early on, and Rich Hill on the other side already pitched against these Rockies at Coors Field once this season. 6 innings, 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts in that game. Now at home, I think Rich Hill can at least give the Pirates 5 solid innings, maybe 6 or more. I think the Pittsburgh Pirates take this one. So give me the Pittsburgh Pirates on the run line, laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, it's the Detroit Tigers taking on the Cleveland Guardians. Eduardo Rodriguez and Peyton Battenfield are your starters. I like the under in this game, as I do think both starting pitchers can put together strong performances, but it's tough to pass up that plus money with Eduardo Rodriguez, even on the road here. He's on a great run. His last 20 2/3 innings, only 1 earned run allowed with 20 strikeouts along the way, only 3 walks, and 2 of those starts were against the Baltimore Orioles, a very strong lineup against lefties. The other one against the New York Mets, a team that has struggled against lefties, but also a team that limits strikeouts, and Rodriguez had 9 strikeouts in that game. So I think he pitches well. The Guardians have struggled against lefties. They did so in 2022 and so far in 2023. Battenfield, I think he's going to pitch well in this game, but you look at his starts, the Guardians have lost all 5 of his games this season, most of those games by 2 or more runs, and he pitched against the Tigers back on April 18th. He gave up a home run in that game through 6 innings. It was a really solid start, but the Tigers still won that game 1-0 in the end. I like the Tigers to win this one. I like the under as well, so give me Detroit at plus money. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Clayton Kershaw and Wade Miley are your starters. We got 2 teams pitching lefties in this game and 2 teams that cannot hit lefties in this game. 2 teams that, overall this year, you look at their numbers and you look at the last 2 weeks. The Dodgers against lefties 23rd in baseball in team OPS. The Brewers 28th in baseball. So even worse numbers. You look at the isolated power numbers. Milwaukee 27th in the league. The Dodgers much better numbers, but still striking out quite a bit. Both of these rosters are against lefties. Dodgers 27.9% against lefties in the strikeout rate in the last 2 weeks. Brewers 29.2%, which are both of those numbers are top 5 highest. I do think runs are going to be hard to come by, but I also trust the Dodgers starting pitcher and Clayton Kershaw a little bit more than Wade Miley, and I trust this Dodgers bullpen if this is a close game late. Like I've mentioned, outside of Devin Williams, I do think that the Brewers bullpen is quite overvalued and overrated. So I'm going to take the Los Angeles Dodgers and lean towards the under in this one. Give me the Dodgers on the run line. I think they can get to Wade Miley for a few runs. I don't see the Brewers doing much against Kershaw. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. We're going to see Edward Cabrera and Merrill Kelly on the mound in this one. To me, this is a really tough series for the Marlins, and I don't love this matchup for the Fish either. As Edward Cabrera, he's pitched pretty well this season. He's got a 4.78 ERA, but I don't think it tells the full story. He's got really good strikeout stuff, 36 strikeouts in 27 innings. The big problem for him has been his control, and recently, really, he's been missing, not only outside the zone walking batters, but giving up the long ball, but missing pitches inside the zone. He's given up at least one home run in each of his last 4 starts. Now, those matchups were really tough matchups against teams like the Giants, who hit righties well, the Braves, who hit everybody well, and the Cubs the last 2 games, facing the same team twice in the same week. But now it doesn't get really much easier for Cabrera as he's facing a Diamondbacks team that, believe it or not, in the last 2 weeks is number 1 in baseball, or actually number 2 in baseball, in team OPS against right-handed pitchers, just behind the Boston Red Sox. So, I do think that the Diamondbacks are also second in baseball in isolated power, and they have the lowest strikeout rate and the highest walk rate. This just seems like a really bad matchup for Edward Cabrera. Merrill Kelly on the other side, although his ERA is a little bit higher at home this season, his opponent's batting average is much lower at 177 with 28 strikeouts and 23 2/3 innings. The Marlins have struggled against right-handed pitchers in the last 2 weeks and basically the whole season as well. So to me, this is not a great matchup for the Fish. Give me the Arizona Diamondbacks on the money line, and I'd lay a little bit on the run line as well. Next up, it's the Texas Rangers taking on the Seattle Mariners. Luis Castillo and Dane Dunning are your projected starters. I know Luis Castillo was not his best in his last start against the Astros, but really it was one mistake pitch against Yordan Alvarez. I mean, how many pitchers have done that in their career? But, Castillo gave up that 3-run home run. His final line gave up 4 earned runs and a home run in 7 innings. He still gave the Mariners competitive innings in that game, and I think he bounces back here. Dane Dunning on the other side, more of, he started the season out of the bullpen. The Rangers have had some injuries in their rotation, including to Jacob deGrom. So now Dunning has been a starting pitcher in this rotation. His strikeout numbers concern me. Only 14 Ks in 25 1/3 innings. I do think there's some regression in his future, and I think the Mariners could exploit that in this game. The Mariners also have the much better bullpen, so even if this game is close late, I think Seattle has a big advantage in that facet. So Dane Dunning hasn't really been able to go too deep into games this year. I look for the Texas Rangers bullpen to enter the game right around the 6th inning, and I think the Mariners can really do a lot of damage when it comes to that. So give me the Seattle Mariners on the run line at home. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the San Francisco Giants. Josiah Gray and Sean Manaea are your starters in this one. The Giants have hit right-handed pitchers very well in 2023, but Josiah Gray has also pitched well himself this season. He's got a 2.38 road ERA and 22 2/3 innings away from home, 24 strikeouts, and only 2 home runs allowed. I think he pitches well in this game at a pitcher-friendly ballpark. And Sean Manaea is not really the type of starting pitcher that I would want to back with San Francisco, especially at this price against a team like the Washington Nationals. Yes, this Nationals team doesn't have a lot of power, and Sean Manaea's had some issues with the home run ball, so he probably won't have an issue with that in this game, but his control's been off. He's walked a lot of batters, and he's a strikeout-dependent pitcher facing a Washington Nationals team that does such a good job at putting the ball in play. They're the 3rd lowest strikeout rate against lefties in the last 2 weeks with only a 14.9% strikeout rate against those lefties. I think they can get on base plenty of times in this game against Sean Manaea and a pretty subpar Giants bullpen. So give me the Washington Nationals. We're getting a great price here with the better starting pitcher. I think this matchup benefits Washington. Next up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Kevin Gausman and Zach Wheeler are your starters. It's tough to have a lot of faith in either of these options right now. We saw both of these starters get crushed against the Boston Red Sox in their last starts. Wheeler giving up 5 total runs, 7 base hits in 5 1/3 innings and a 5-3 loss. Kevin Gausman giving up 8 earned runs and a homer in an 11-5 loss at Fenway Park. I do think the Blue Jays have the much better bullpen and the much better lineup against right-handed pitchers, so I would lean towards Toronto in this game. I think Gausman, we've seen a couple of times where he just got shelled in the early parts of games. We saw it against the Houston Astros back on April 17th, but going into that game against the Red Sox, Gausman put together back-to-back starts, 14 innings combined with 24 strikeouts, no earned runs. He was in great form before that game at Fenway. We know Fenway, very tough place to pitch for some pitchers. I think Gausman has a better chance of bouncing back than Zach Wheeler, who, Zach Wheeler was facing a lot of weak lineups. Teams like the Astros against a righty, which we know they've struggled, the Colorado Rockies away from Coors Field, the White Sox, the Marlins. Wheeler had a really weak schedule. He was pitching okay in those games. Then he faced a really solid lineup, struggled quite a bit. I think he struggles again in this one. Give me the Toronto Blue Jays on the money line on the road. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Dean Kramer and Yanni Chirinos are your projected starters. It looks like the Rays are going with a bullpen game here with Chirinos opening it up. And, I do think the Rays still have some regression concerns in that bullpen. When you look at the numbers, Right now, the Tampa Bay Rays, the third highest Sierra in the bullpen, only behind the Nationals and the Oakland Athletics. We know two bullpens that are two of the worst in the National League. When you look at the xFIP numbers, Tampa Bay not much better. They're fourth in baseball behind the A's, the Rangers, and the White Sox. The Nationals just ahead of the White Sox. So some of the worst bullpens in baseball, right around where Tampa Bay is in those advanced analytics. And Dean Kramer on the other side, I don't really trust his game against this very strong Tampa Bay Rays lineup against right-handed pitchers. I think both teams get on the board early and often in this one. Give me the over in Tampa Bay, Baltimore. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Griffin Canning and Christian Javier are your starters. I've mentioned just how bad the Astros have struggled against right-handed pitchers, especially right-handed starting pitchers this season, but it's tough not to back him in this game when you see how well Christian Javier pitched against the Angels last season. I think he's the far better starting pitcher in this matchup, and last year, 16 innings of work, a 2.25 ERA against the Halos, and 31 strikeouts in those 16 innings. Basically 2 strikeouts per inning against the Angels and a 193 opponent's batting average. Griffin Canning's last start was his worst by far this year. 5 innings, 6 base hits, 5 earned runs, a home run, 3 walks, and only 3 strikeouts. So the strikeout number's starting to dip. I do think that the Astros do enough here against Canning early on and add a few runs in this Angels bullpen to get a win in the end. So give me the Houston Astros on the money line. Next up, it's the New York Mets taking on the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to see Hunter Greene and Justin Verlander on the mound in this one. Not my favorite game on the board, but I'd lean towards the Mets on the run line. Justin Verlander, after his first inning against the Tigers in his first start as a New York Met, he gave up those 2 home runs to Baez and Greene. It looked like, Verlander might struggle in this game, but he pitched really well by the end of it. Went 5 innings, 2 runs, those 2 home runs, and 5 strikeouts in the end, and the Mets offense did not back him up in that game. I do think, though, they can back him up in this one, as they did very well against Hunter Greene last season. In 5 1/3 innings, Hunter Greene gave up 7 base hits, 6 earned runs, and 2 home runs against this New York Mets lineup, and I think a big part of that is the fact that the New York Mets do a great job at working counts, not really striking out much, getting on base via the walk. Hunter Greene's coming off one of his weaker starts of the season, 5 2/3 against the White Sox, 5 earned runs, 7 base hits, and 2 home runs in that game. The home run ball, really, the big concern for me is Greene. We know last year had a big problem giving up a lot of home runs. So I'm going to take the New York Mets in a lean here on the run line. I also think they have the better bullpen, so give me the New York Mets. Next up, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the Kansas City Royals. Lance Lynn and Brad Keller on the mound in this one. Now, I was watching that game between the Athletics and the Royals last week when Keller was on the mound for Kansas City. And I was thinking to myself, how in the world does this guy have a sub-4 ERA going into this game? And we saw him give up 11 base hits, 7 total runs, 6 of those were earned, 2 home runs, 4 walks, and only 1 strikeout in 4 1/3 in a 12-8 loss for Kansas City. And now the ERA is at 4.67. I think it's still climbing up to above 5 at some point. I don't trust Keller in this spot. The White Sox have improved their numbers against right-handed pitchers the last couple of weeks and the last couple of games, and they've gotten a lot healthier in their lineup. That's a big reason for it. Lance Lynn, he's definitely got an ERA, high ERA at 6.86. Hasn't been the best start to the season for him, but at least he can earn strikeouts. He can miss some bats. I think he's a lot more competitive on the mound, in my opinion, than Brad Keller is. So I'm going to take the Chicago White Sox here. We saw last year Lance Lynn pitched 19 innings against Kansas City at a 2.84 ERA and 21 strikeouts in those 19. So give me the White Sox on the money line. Next up, we see the Boston Red Sox taking on the Atlanta Braves. No official starter for Atlanta in this one. We should see Brian Bayo going for the Red Sox. And I think Brian Bayo is going to be a strong starting pitching option in this rotation in the near future for the Red Sox, but I just don't love this matchup for him. I don't love his current form either. He's been able to miss some bats lately. He's been able to keep the ball on the ground. His ground ball to fly ball ratio is solid, but he's still giving up home runs. He's given up at least 1 home run in each of his first 4 starts this year, giving up a lot of sharp contact, a lot more than last year, and just a lot of his numbers, from last year to this year, a little bit concerning. His fastball spin rate is way down from last year. His fastball velocity is a little bit down. His chase rate's down as well. I do think the Braves, they've proven they're one of the toughest lineups in the National League this year. Very powerful lineup, even against right-handed pitchers. They're top 10 right now in the last 2 weeks against righties in team OPS and isolated power. So I'm going to take the Braves here in a lean on the run line at home. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Chicago Cubs. Jordan Montgomery and Justin Steele, a pair of lefties on the mound in this one. Jordan Montgomery pitched so well against the Chicago Cubs last season. He went 22 innings of shutout baseball, did not give up a single earned run against Chicago in those games. No home runs as well. Pitched well at Wrigley Field, and so far this season, he's been so much better away from home than he's been at Busch Stadium, which is a little bit surprising because you could consider Busch Stadium a pitcher-friendly ballpark. But on the road this season, in 19 2/3 innings, only 1 earned run allowed at .46 ERA for Montgomery, 22 strikeouts, and a 178 opponent's batting average. Justin Steele himself, he's pitched so well at Wrigley Field, a .74 ERA at home this season in 24 1/3 innings of work. Keeps the ball on the ground, limits those home runs. I think both pitchers pitch well in this game. Give me the under in Cardinals-Cubs. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Minnesota Twins. We're going to see Seth Lugo and Pablo Lopez on the mound in this one. To me, this is a coin flip game, and it's why we see basically a coin flip price in this one with the Twins as small favorites at home. I'd lean towards the Twins in this game. I do think Pablo Lopez is a better starting pitching option. And the Twins, pretty good power numbers against righties in the last 2 weeks, 4th in baseball in isolated power, and a pretty high walk rate at 11.8% as well. Second in baseball in that facet. So I'm going to take the Minnesota Twins here in a lean with Pablo Lopez. Even though he struggled at Target Field, I think he bounces back here. Give me the Twins on the money line. And that's it. Those are the games for Wednesday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.